Have you ever wondered what a prehistoric parent feared the most when darkness fell and the world was ruled by forces they could not fully understand? Imagine standing in a landscape untouched by civilization, where every sound carried meaning, every shadow held a possibility, and every decision could determine whether a child survived the night. In those ancient moments, early humans believed the world spoke to them. They studied the wind, the movement of animals, the color of the sky, the rhythm of fire, searching for spiritual signs that revealed where safety lived. This wasn't superstition. It was survival shaped by a deep psychological bond with nature, a connection far stronger than anything we feel today. When a group sensed danger approaching, they didn't just run, they interpreted. They listened to symbolic messages in the environment, believing that the spirits of ancestors guided them to hidden places where their young could remain unseen. These signs became sacred maps, transmitted through gestures, carvings, and whispered stories around ancient fires. And as the world shifted, these clues helped entire communities protect their children from predators, rival clans, storms, and the unknown forces they believed moved between the trees. The spiritual world wasn't separate from daily life. It was the compass they trusted more than their own instincts. You might be surprised by how much of this ancient psychology still exists inside us. You might recognize it in the strange feeling that something is wrong before you can explain why, or the instinct to pull someone you love closer without knowing the reason. Have you ever felt that? If so, stay with me, because what you are about to uncover may change the way you see the past and the hidden messages that shaped our earliest families. Before we continue, tell me in the comments if you have ever sensed something you couldn't explain. Leave your like to help this investigation reach more people, and check if you are already subscribed so you do not miss the next layers of this discovery. Now hold on to this thought as we move forward, because the next clues deepen the mystery that began thousands of years ago, still echoing quietly beneath our modern world. They moved through the prehistoric landscape with a tension that lived beneath the skin, a constant awareness that danger did not announce itself with clarity. For early human groups, fear was not only an emotion, but a tool sharpened by evolution. Every parent carried the memory of past losses, and every young life represented the fragile future of the entire clan. When night approached, or when the wind shifted in an unfamiliar way, the adults felt an instinctive pull to gather the children and hold them close. This wasn't fear in the modern sense. It was a deep ancestral warning system shaped by generations who had learned, often through tragedy, that the world did not forgive hesitation. Across open plains, dense forests, and rocky shelters, early humans read the environment as if it were alive. A sudden silence among birds, the agitation of small animals, or the unnatural stillness of water were interpreted as messages revealing unseen threats. These subtle cues guided decisions far more than spoken language. The psychology of protection was intertwined with the belief that the world communicated through signs. Even before forming complex rituals, these groups instinctively connected emotional responses with external patterns, creating a silent dialogue between human intuition and the forces of nature. For them, hiding their young was not a single action but a process built on layers of perception. They observed how predators moved, how rival clans approached, how storms formed on the horizon. They remembered past escapes, past mistakes, and past victories. Through this lived experience, parents developed an almost heightened sensory system, constantly scanning the environment for disturbances too faint for modern humans to notice. Their fear was not weakness. It was a refined survival mechanism that strengthened bonds within the group. Protecting a child meant protecting the future lineage, ensuring that the clan's knowledge, rituals, and unspoken wisdom endured beyond the present moment. As danger grew nearer, the adults rarely explained their decisions aloud. They acted swiftly, relying on shared understanding passed down through countless seasons. The younger adults watched, learning, through imitation, how to interpret signs that might save them one day. Even when the threat was invisible, the body responded first, tightening muscles, sharpening focus, urging movement. This instinctive response shaped every protective action, guiding families into caves, behind rock formations, or deep into vegetation where the young could blend with the landscape. And as the tension rose, something ancient stirred within them, a recognition that survival depended on trusting these signals, both external and internal, as they prepared for what the unfolding night might bring next. They soon learned that the world did not simply react to their presence. It communicated through patterns that demanded interpretation. The sky itself became one of their greatest guides. Shifts in cloud shapes, the unusual dimming of light, or the sudden appearance of birds flying in tight clusters were seen as spiritual signals shaping their next move. These ancient groups believed the heavens carried messages from forces far older than themselves, and ignoring these messages meant risking the lives of their children. They watched the stars with reverence, not for navigation alone, but for reassurance that the night would not betray them. A streak of light in the sky could be a warning, a shifting constellation, a sign that danger was awakening nearby. On the ground, every footprint, bent branch, or cluster of stones became a symbolic language. When predators passed during the night, they left. Disturbances in the soil that parents read as if deciphering a sacred script. Even the direction of the wind mattered. A slight change could carry the scent of an approaching threat or reveal that the clan's hiding place was too exposed. These observations were never random. Over generations, they evolved into a spiritual system deeply tied to survival, where each natural occurrence held meaning and shaped decisions that could determine whether a child would see the next sunrise. Listening to the earth was as important as watching the skies. When the ground vibrated faintly beneath their feet, early humans believed it reflected movements of unseen forces. They sensed danger through subtle environmental changes long before modern tools could detect them. Moisture in the air, the trembling of leaves, the way fire crackled at night all contributed to their reading of the world. These were not simple cues, but layered messages that connected the physical and the mystical. Parents relied on them with an almost spiritual devotion, trusting that their ancestors communicated through these signs, offering protection through whispers embedded in nature. These signals did more than inform decisions. They shaped the emotional landscape of the group. A sudden omen perceived in the shape of a cloud or the call of a distant animal could trigger an immediate shift in behavior. Children were gathered, quieted, hidden. Adults positioned themselves strategically, anticipating a threat not yet visible. The merging of instinct and belief created a heightened awareness that kept the group alive through countless unseen dangers. And as they continued reading these signs, the clan moved with growing urgency, sensing that the world was preparing to reveal its next message, one that would shape their path and the safety of their young in ways they could not yet understand. They followed these signs with a devotion that blended instinct and reverence, believing that the unseen world spoke to them in moments of uncertainty. When a pattern in the sky aligned with the trembling of leaves on the ground, the clan understood that they stood at a crossroads where physical danger and spiritual guidance intertwined. In these moments, the elders stepped forward, not as rulers, but as interpreters of the invisible. Their memories held stories of past seasons when similar signals had appeared, stories of storms, predators, rival groups, and inexplicable events that had shaped the survival of their ancestors. These recollections were more than narratives. They were warnings encoded in wisdom, urging the clan to act before fear turned into loss. As the signs intensified, the spiritual dimension became a guiding force. Early humans believed that the spirits walked beside them not as distant deities, but as intimate presences intertwined with wind, fire, water, and stone. The elders approached these forces with humility, offering gestures or simple rituals meant to acknowledge the guidance received. These rituals were not elaborate, yet they carried immense emotional weight. A touch on the ground, a raised hand toward the shifting sky, or a whispered phrase shaped by generations could anchor the group in a moment of clarity, reinforcing the decision to move the children to a safer place. It was spirituality woven directly into survival. What made these practices powerful was not only the belief behind them, but the unity they produced. Fear did not scatter the group. It pulled them together. Every adult knew their role, whether creating diversions, scouting the terrain, or carrying the youngest members. Their movements became synchronized, guided by shared understanding and trust in the signals interpreted by their elders. Even the children sensed the gravity of these moments. They learned early to recognize the subtle shift in the adult's posture, the quickened pace, the way voices dropped to whispers. In this silence, they felt the weight of an ancient pact. The world would speak, and their people would listen. Yet beneath this coordinated response lived an unspoken tension. The landscape held mysteries they could not fully interpret, and sometimes the signs conflicted or remained ambiguous. These uncertainties forced them to make decisions guided not only by external messages, but by inner intuition shaped through countless trials. And as they prepared to act, gathering the young and seeking the hidden spaces that had sheltered previous generations, an unshakable feeling rose within them that the next choice would define more than safety. It would echo into the memory of the clan, becoming part of the symbolic teachings passed forward. Before we continue, share in the comments what spiritual or intuitive sign you have ever felt guiding your decisions, adding your voice to this unfolding reflection that connects us to the past in ways we often overlook. They carried the children in silence, moving with deliberate steps through terrain shaped by centuries of stories and warnings. Every member of the group understood that protecting the young required both physical caution and deep attentiveness to the subtle cues that surrounded them. As they approached areas known only to the elders, the atmosphere changed. The air felt heavier, as if the earth itself was aware of their presence. These places were not chosen randomly. They were sanctuaries, discovered through trial, loss, and intuition, locations where the landscape offered natural camouflage and where the spirits, according to their beliefs, shielded the vulnerable from danger. These hidden spaces varied from rocky crevices to dense clusters of vegetation that blended seamlessly with the environment. Some were tucked beneath overhanging cliffs, while others lay within winding paths only the elders could navigate. Over generations, these locations became part of the clan's silent memory, preserved through gestures, markings on stone, or moments when parents guided the hands of their children along specific patterns etched into the walls of caves. For the elders, passing down this knowledge was an emotional responsibility. It meant transmitting not only strategies for survival, but also the understanding that these shelters held spiritual significance molded by countless ancestral experiences. The journey to these protective spaces was as important as the hiding itself. The adults observed the behavior of animals around them, noting whether birds flew erratically or if prey animals hesitated in open areas. Such details indicated shifting conditions that could either confirm their safety or warn them of unseen threats. The landscape became a living map, layered with meaning. A stream's sudden murmur could signal changes in weather, while the distant call of a predatory animal could alter their course. Every sound shaped their choices, reinforcing the delicate connection between human instinct and the natural world that surrounded them. Within these shelters, the young were taught to remain still, listening to the whispers of the wind, and learning how silence could be a powerful form of protection. The adults gathered around the entrances, forming a living barrier between danger and the fragile heartbeat of the next generation. Their breaths synchronized with the rhythm of the land, and their minds remained focused on interpreting any signal that might suggest a need to move again. Time stretched in these moments, marked by the flicker of distant light or the shifting of shadows. As they waited, the emotional weight of responsibility deepened, reminding them that survival was not guaranteed, but earned through constant awareness and unity. The clan stood poised between the known and the unknown, prepared for whatever message the world would reveal next. Deep inside those protective spaces, as the young settled into the quiet, the adults faced an equally important task: interpreting the meaning behind their own reactions. The psychology that shaped prehistoric decision-making was not separate from their spiritual worldview. Their instincts, emotions, and fears were viewed as messages just as important as the signs they observed in the sky or on the ground. Early humans believed that intuition was not merely a feeling, but a channel through which ancestral wisdom flowed. When a parent felt an inexplicable urge to move deeper into a shelter or redirect the group's path, that sensation carried the same authority as a visible sign. In the environment, they trusted these impulses because survival had proven them reliable over countless generations. This internal guidance system evolved through repeated encounters with danger. Each near miss, each successful escape, each loss etched psychological patterns into the collective memory of the clan. Over time, these patterns became a network of shared understanding. Children grew up observing how elders reacted to subtle cues, learning to read not only the environment but the emotional signals expressed through posture, breath, and silence. Fear, rather than weakening them, sharpened their awareness. It intensified their ability to perceive shifts in the world around them and strengthened the bond that kept the group united. They viewed emotion as a companion to survival, not an enemy to be conquered. This relationship between instinct and spirituality influenced how they taught the young to navigate danger. Stories passed down by firelight were not merely tales. They were psychological maps disguised as myths. A tale about a spirit guiding a hunter away from danger served as a lesson in recognizing intuition. A warning about ignoring a whisper from the wind taught the value of listening to subtle internal alarms. These narratives helped future generations internalize the emotional intelligence necessary to survive in a world where threats moved silently and unpredictably. Through storytelling, the clan shaped not only the behavior of their children, but the emotional frameworks that allowed them to sense danger before it became visible. Parents observed the emotional state of their young closely. A child's sudden unease was taken seriously, seen as a potential sign that their spirit was communicating something the adults had overlooked. In moments of heightened tension, when predators roamed nearby or rival groups approached, the adults studied one another as carefully as they observed the landscape. A glance, a tightened jaw, a sudden stillness. These subtle expressions shaped decisions as much as physical evidence. The psychology of the group functioned like an intricate web, each person's emotions resonating with the others to create a collective awareness far more powerful than individual perception. As they waited, hidden and alert, this shared sensitivity prepared them for the next shift in the environment, one that would soon demand decisive action and deepen their bond with the symbolic world they believed watched over them. As the hours stretched inside those hidden sanctuaries, the clan relied on more than instinct and observation. They drew strength from a symbolic network of teachings that flowed from one generation to the next, shaping how each member understood the presence of danger and the meaning of protection. These messages were not written or carved in a way modern eyes would immediately recognize. Instead, they lived within gestures, rhythms, chants, and stories layered with metaphors that children absorbed long before fully understanding their purpose. For early humans, symbolism was the bridge between past and present, a way to honor the knowledge of ancestors while equipping the young to interpret the world with clarity and courage. Around the fire or during long migrations, elders told stories that served as coded instructions. A tale about a great bird that hid its chicks beneath shifting shadows taught children how to recognize safe spaces. A narrative about spirits guiding. A family away from an unseen predator instructed them to trust subtle cues in the environment. These stories were not entertainment, but survival strategies transformed into cultural memory. Even when danger was absent, parents repeated these teachings so the young would internalize them, understanding that protection depended not only on physical shelters, but on an ability to perceive meaning in the world's smallest movements. Symbols were woven into everyday life. The way a parent placed a stone at the entrance of a shelter could represent a warning or an invitation. The orientation of gathered branches could communicate whether it was safe to remain hidden or necessary to relocate. Hands tracing patterns on cave walls conveyed instructions without sound, ensuring predators or rival groups would not detect their presence. These subtle messages allowed the clan to move as a unified body, acting with discretion while safeguarding their most vulnerable members. Even the children learned to recognize these signals, forming their earliest understanding of how their community communicated beneath the surface of ordinary action. This transmission of symbolic knowledge reinforced emotional resilience. When fear threatened to overwhelm them, the stories and gestures provided anchors of meaning, reminding the clan that they were part of a lineage guided by forces greater than their immediate circumstances. Symbols helped them process uncertainty and inspired confidence in their collective decisions. Every movement, every sign, every whispered teaching echoed those who had survived before them. And now, as we uncover these layers of silent communication, it becomes clear how deeply symbolism shaped survival in the prehistoric world. Share in the comments what symbolic message or ancestral teaching from your own life has ever guided you, even in subtle ways, adding your voice to this exploration of how meaning travels through time. Rituals emerged naturally from the rhythms of daily life, becoming a quiet yet powerful force in the protection of the young. These practices were not elaborate ceremonies as we imagine today, but subtle patterns of behavior infused with meaning. A parent brushing ash across a child's forehead before nightfall, a faint hum shared among adults as they prepared to move, or a carefully timed pause before crossing an open plain all carried symbolic weight. These acts reinforced unity, sharpened awareness, and helped the clan synchronize their emotions before danger had the chance to approach. Rituals became a form of preparation, aligning their minds and bodies with the world they believed surrounded them with unseen guidance. Some rituals were tied to specific places. Hidden shelters carried marks from generations past, patterns traced into stone by ancestors who had survived similar threats. When parents returned to these spaces, they touched the markings as if greeting old guardians, drawing reassurance from knowing that others had faced the same fear and endured. These small gestures helped reinforce the belief that their actions were part of a continuum, that they were not navigating danger alone, but walking in the footsteps of those who had faced the same uncertainty. Even without formal language, children picked up on the emotional significance of these acts, learning to associate them with moments of heightened caution and collective resolve. Other rituals emerged during movement. Before crossing unfamiliar terrain, the group often paused to listen, not just to the environment but to one another. This shared silence allowed them to sense changes too subtle for individual perception. Breathing slowed, footsteps synchronized, and tension softened into purposeful calm. These moments strengthened their ability to respond quickly and cohesively when danger appeared. The rituals acted as emotional signals, reminding each member of their role within the group and reinforcing trust in the decisions shaped by instinct and observation. Rituals also helped soothe fear. When children recognized the familiar motions performed by their parents during stressful moments, their anxiety eased. They understood that these gestures were part of a larger system of protection that had kept their people alive for countless generations. The adults, in turn, drew strength from seeing the children respond with quiet confidence. This mutual reassurance deepened their bond and steadied their movements as they navigated the unpredictable landscape around them. In the stillness of these shared practices, the clan found balance between action and reflection. Rituals allowed them to interpret the world not only through signs, but through the emotional clarity that came from repeated, meaningful patterns. And as they continued their journey through shifting terrain and uncertain shadows, these rituals acted as both memory and guide, shaping their next decisions as the environment prepared to reveal its next quiet warning. As generations passed, the landscapes these clans once crossed began to accumulate silent traces of their existence. Hidden pathways, smoothed stones, faint engravings on cave walls, and the remains of temporary shelters offered subtle clues about how they lived and how they protected their young. These marks were never intended to be records in the modern sense. Instead, they were practical signs left behind for future members of the group, a quiet language, shaped by necessity. Yet today, when archaeologists uncover these remnants, they reveal patterns of movement and decision-making that reflect the emotional and spiritual world of early humans. In each mark, we see not only evidence of survival, but echoes of fear, hope, and the deep instinct to safeguard the next generation. Some of the most revealing traces were found in locations far from where daily activities took place. These distant sites suggest deliberate efforts to conceal the young in places only accessible to those carrying knowledge passed from elder to apprentice. The isolation of these areas demonstrates how much planning went into ensuring that the most vulnerable members of the clan remained out of sight when danger approached. The terrain often offered natural barriers, narrow entrances leading into wider chambers, overhangs masked by vegetation, or ridges that concealed movement from predators and rival groups. These environments served both physical and symbolic roles, becoming living testaments to strategic thinking intertwined with spiritual belief. Other clues appear in the subtle modifications early humans made to their surroundings. Stones arranged in patterns that seem random today once communicated important information about direction, safety, or the presence of nearby water. Charcoal remnants suggest that fires were placed intentionally behind rock formations to conceal their glow, ensuring that warmth did not betray their location. Even the placement of discarded tools reveals moments of haste or caution, hinting at the emotional tension that shaped their actions. These traces allow us to reconstruct not only the physical routes they followed, but the psychological landscape that guided their decisions. The marks left on cave walls are perhaps the most symbolic reminders of their worldview. Some depict animals or abstract shapes, while others appear as simple lines or handprints. These images may have represented warnings, spiritual requests, or messages intended to guide future generations. The handprints in particular hold a powerful emotional weight, as if someone reaching across time wished to say, "We were here. We survived. Learn from us." Each mark becomes a whisper from the past, revealing the connection between human vulnerability and resilience. Through these traces, we gain insight into how prehistoric groups blended instinct, spiritual belief, and practical skill to protect their young. And as we follow these silent pathways left behind in stone and earth, the world of these early humans becomes clearer, revealing how deeply their actions were shaped by forces both seen and unseen, guiding them toward the next decision that would determine the fate of their people. As we follow the faint marks left across stone, earth, and memory, a final layer of their world begins to emerge. The legacy that survived not through words, but through presence. These prehistoric groups never imagined that distant generations would one day study the traces they left behind. Yet every hidden shelter, every arranged stone, every handprint pressed into cave walls became a quiet message carried forward through time. Their actions reveal a profound truth about the human experience. Protection was not simply a reaction to danger, it was an identity, a shared purpose that bound the clan together and shaped their understanding of the world. Through instinct, ritual, and spiritual interpretation, they created a system where survival and meaning blended into a single pathway, guiding each generation toward the safety of the next. The young who learned to move silently through forests or to remain still within dark shelters carried those lessons into adulthood. They became the next interpreters of signs, the next guardians of symbolic knowledge inherited from those who had navigated danger long before them. And in this transmission, the clan preserved an emotional continuity that extended beyond any single life. Even as landscapes shifted and threats evolved, the core of their worldview remained steady. The belief that the world, visible and invisible, offered guidance to those who listened with attentive hearts. This trust shaped their decisions, their relationships, and their identity as a people connected not only by blood, but by understanding. In the marks they left behind, we see reflections of our own longing for meaning. Modern lives may not depend on reading the movement of animals or the shape of a cloud, yet the same desire to sense what cannot be fully seen persists. We seek patterns, intuition, emotional signals, and spiritual reassurance just as they did. Their world and ours are separated by millennia, yet bound by the same human need to protect, interpret, and connect. As we retrace their steps, we discover that these ancient messages were never meant to remain frozen in the past. They were meant to echo forward, reminding us that the traditions of care, awareness, and spiritual sensitivity still live within us, waiting to be recognized in quiet moments. If you have walked with this story until now, let your presence be known. Leave a comment with the words, "This message was for me, so I know you felt this connection across time." And if the journey through these ancestral signs brought you new insights, consider subscribing to the channel so we can explore more of the hidden layers of human history together. A simple like also helps this kind of content reach those who value reflection and discovery. There is a video here beside this one that deepens another part of our past, offering a thread that continues this exploration. Follow it when you are ready, and let the next chapter unfold in your own time.